Hello, welcome to our tech journey. Adrian, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine, and I hope everyone as well here in the audience does fine as well. Great. So we have another session today. About what
Today,
do we talk today?
today is about junior engineers primarily, and with it's not so much about the label itself, but who is junior, who is not junior. It's more about the conversation regarding how to mentor, how to instill growth, how to sort of not be in the way of their progress, how to avoid this idea that I can only be productive on my team if I have seniors, how to avoid this trap of we can finish this project quickly if I give it to my senior or slowly if I give it to my junior, because that kind of thinking then sets off the whole product on the wrong rails. It kills incentives to learn. It kills incentives to make mistakes, and then that provides a very, let's say, poor engineering culture that stigmatizes learning, that stigmatizes growth, that stigmatizes personal development. And the agenda for today is essentially number one, how to cultivate responsibility and mentorship. So how to make sure that you're not blocking that nothing in your process is blocking it. Number two is, what does self-management look like? We saw an influx of developers who are sort of not really developers, but just coders. So they just wait for tasks to be handed to them, and they don't really manage their own time. They expect to be managed.
Mm,
And as a bonus topic, if we have time, we're going to go over the habits, the responsibilities, the sort of properties of high performing teams. What do they do differently? Because it's quite a different beast once you're in that kind of environment. It's very hard to go from an environment that struggles with this to a high performing team. But once you're there, it's really easy. The habits are hard. It's challenging to go from bad culture to good culture. Once you're there, it's life becomes easier, right? So really the hard part is on the majority of the teams that have never been really exposed to a culture of high performance.
mm. Good. So, junior developers. So, first of all, maybe we should define what, in our opinion, in our context, are stages. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, and maybe, or I would like to put out from my side, I never talk too much about pay grades. So for me, those stages are more um, like yeah, let's say, like stages in the common sense. So a junior developer is the junior person who starts, just a beginner level. So you start to
Mm-hmm.
do something. Then you have those mid-level things, those mid-level stages where you do the bulk work. I call it like that. So it's basically the majority of the work, the workhorses. You are already capable of doing things by
Mm-hmm.
yourself mostly, and you are not yet doing big decisions, so you're not
Mm-hmm.
doing the long-term stuff, but you can work on your own actually. And
Yeah.
then you have the senior stages. The senior stages is more, let's say, a senior person for me is a person who thinks a lot, thinks about the future, thinks about consequences, thinks about how to nurture others in order to
Mm-hmm.
grow. So it's more like the cornerstone of the team, the mentor of the team.
Yeah.
It's something between the team lead and the others. Someone who takes care of the future of the team. Of course, senior developers do work as well. It's not like guys with long beard sitting there and just
Hey.
doing philosophical stuff. But still, this is for me. Those three main stages are there, and I think we are talking about specifically the junior part today,
Mm-hmm.
and what I would like to focus on a little bit is the average part as well,
Mm-hmm.
because I think it's very interesting, especially for business owners as well, or let's say business owners, for team leads, to what to focus on. Because when we talk about juniors, we will come to the point where we talk about goals as well. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe to start with that little topic, I had an interesting article. I think it was interesting. I was written it, or I was the author actually, and I was talking about my findings of that you need to focus on the average. It's called like that. The article is
Mm-hmm.
called like that. And if you're a tech lead, focus on the average developer. Why? Because first of all, you are not senior only, so
Mm-hmm.
it is easier to find people. So this is an obvious reason. So
Obviously, yeah.
if you make everything that simple in your process that seniors to actually work aren't necessary, it's a big advantage. And for the junior developers, maybe give us a shout out today in the comments if you are a junior watching this show,
Mm-hmm.
how many juniors we actually have in the audience today. And the juniors have a realistic goal. So when you know the gap between a beginning junior and a 2 decades seasoned senior is huge. It's
Yeah.
huge. It's 20 years of experience, broad experience, not a single thing. Not, for example, people call themselves today, for example, I'm a React junior, and the senior developer doesn't have something like React. It's simply a senior developer because
Mm-hmm.
doing did so much, been there, seen that kind of
Yeah.
story. And
Absolutely.
this is huge. So you can't say, okay, this is your goal. It's a role model, but
Mm-hmm.
it's no goal. And your goal is the average developer. It's the point where you come from the position of a junior developer, and be able to work on your own without the need of help from someone else. So if you get a task, you understand the task, you plan the task, you execute, you deliver.
Yeah.
This is your goal. This is not seniority. This is mid level. And this is what I call the average developer. And
Mm-hmm.
many people stay on this level for quite a long time, even if they become into the or get into the pay grade of senior developer, because they never get the actual traits of a senior developer. But this is a realistic goal for a junior developer, in my opinion, doable already below 1 year of
Mm-hmm.
experience.
It
So
is.
maybe just to give that as a foundation for today.
Okay. So you mentioned that it's about the level of responsibility that they can take on and the way that they approach the problem, without going into details about the pay grade. I would add this nuance here that there are differences in how we look at the bottom and the upper echelons of what we would call seniority. So it's possible that you're not a experienced professional, and that you're not an experienced coder, programmer.
Mm-hmm.
But it is also possible that you are an experienced professional. You might have been in some other business for 20 years, and that you're now taking on coding. Like such a person, by default, I would be very hard pressed in just calling them a junior, because they might have a very strong business acumen, and that already sets them apart. So I would always separate out this idea that there is programming skill, and then there is sort of your level of professionalism, and junior means that both of them are very low. But it's the way in which they grow together. It really sets you
Mm-hmm.
apart from the average developer, I would say, right? So because an average developer for me, um, let's not get carried away. To me, the echelons of the junior and the senior are very different. For me, a senior developer is somebody who has perhaps even stopped growing their programming skill to pursue all other complementary areas of their let's say toolkit, business understanding, maybe their financial ability, maybe their ability in thinking about product growth, about marketing, their ability to recruit, their ability to sort of nurture and lead and manage, while also thinking, about processes, thinking about perhaps AI, thinking about different industries, overlaps of different industries, networking, relationship building, right? So it's somebody who has sort of come to their peak of their programming skill and are now complementing. Like that's somebody who's then growing senior level, staff level, and beyond, right? So it's more to do with the scope of their problems. A junior developer is just scoped down onto a task. A senior engineer might be scoped onto all possible problems that a team might have and whatever that team is touching. Whereas then somebody who is staff level, let's say, which is beyond senior level, would be somebody who is uh, working on multiple teams, a singular problem that affects multiple teams on like a area of the product or in an area of the engineering team. And then you get directors and etc. Still not non-managerial, but mostly just solving hard technical problems that affect a larger group of people who are for the most part either platform engineers or developers directly or product engineers or maybe testing. In that's sort of defining their seniority level in regards to the scope of the problems that they are solving for the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Now that also means that you can't grow very much if the organization is very small, because you'll never grow beyond that scope of problem. On the other side, however, on the junior side, it's a bit different. I would say you're a junior if you're obviously solving just task level stuff. But I would also say you're also a junior if you're solving a task or maybe multiple tasks, and your understanding doesn't go beyond the tools that you're currently using.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. The barrier of entry for programming nowadays is very low because there are a lot of frameworks that allow you to sort of create something tangible without writing a lot of code. So there are a lot of frameworks out there that have sort of very easy boilerplate code where you can run hello world in a iPhone app. It's a complex machine, it's a complex application, but there's so much boilerplate in so many frameworks right now that you can just spin up an Electron app with a template React application for hello world with a button, have AI sort of help you a little bit, and then you spin it up. Now that person that's tricky because they might feel very powerful for spinning up something simple, but their knowledge does not transcend beyond framework knowledge. They don't have architectural knowledge, they don't have business knowledge. What they have is knowledge about how to use React, how to use Next, how to use jQuery, how to use WordPress, how to use Ruby on Rails. Their knowledge is so narrowed down that they are really a specialist coder for a specific framework. They're closer to a plugin writer than they are to a software engineer. Right? I would separate out that level of seniority as well,
Mm-hmm.
because generally when people say, "Oh, I will give it to a junior because they're cheap," what they really want is somebody who is a very easy to work with plugin writer. Just I have these annoying menial tasks and I'll just outsource them to somebody. But I don't want them to make a mess. Right? Like that's usually the barrier that non-technical managers think that outsourcing will bring. The barrier is usually knowing, okay, at what point does me giving them more challenging tasks become a obstacle. Now, the reason I wanted to talk about this today, and I can see that either something went wrong on scheduling, or it's not a very popular topic. We don't have as
We
many
have it
live.
invited this time. We have it invited. That was a problem with
Yeah,
LinkedIn.
I have, but something might have gone wrong.
Yeah, I wasn't able to invite this time, so it was a
Yeah.
little bit annoying.
Still, we have about 15 people watching us live right now. So if you don't mind, if you can give us a live sign that chat works, that you're here, if you can just tell us in chat, what your role is, like how would you label yourself? Like, are you an engineer? Are you junior? Are you senior? Are you a manager? Are you technical, non-technical? Do you think you're managing yourself? Are you being managed? How do you understand your role? That would be a very good place to start, so we can get some audience participation going. Because really, the nurture part is hard to get right, especially in a team that grows from in a startup SMB environment, because you are not like a FANG level company that just shotgun recruits, right? So we just saw this with Spotify, and most FANG companies in 2023, they followed a strategy of over recruitment, right? So for the large companies, the risk of somebody talented going to their competitor is so large that they would rather over recruit and get as many engineers as possible into the company and then they sort of test them internally, and those who don't get promoted very quickly get fired, right? So because for them the opportunity cost of somebody going to another company means that they will need to pay them a lot more money and wait 2-3 years for them to come back and sort of job hop, from Uber to Meta, for example. Now, and that strategy does not work very well for small and medium businesses, because that strategy requires a lot of capital, it requires a lot of patience, and it requires a lot of risk taking. It requires a very um, an environment where you can take a lot, like a high volume, a high amount of very small risks, which means that you already need to have an organization that has 1,000 engineers, so you can play around with recruiting 50 more than you need, right? Whereas with a startup that has 15 engineers, your 16th hire really matters. Like, it really matters. If you start off with a few senior engineers and you already start separating out in mid-level and specialist, if you suddenly invite 2-3 juniors to your team and you do not have a strategy of how to deal with them, how to nurture them, how to integrate them into your culture, then that quickly backfires. And that's usually where a lot of startups that I work with, that's where they break. Going from 13 to 14 people, from 13 to 14, or whatever sort of Dunbar number complexity for you it is, it's usually somewhere between 13 to 14 people, where a engineering team is no longer one team. It does this natural, sort of cell splitting, and then
Critical
if
mass. You break the critical mass.
you break the critical mass, yeah, the dailies become too large, the meetings become too large, they naturally split into two parallel product lines. And if you accidentally end up with more juniors on one side than the other, and you don't really have a strategy of how to nurture them, that breaks companies. Like, that can quickly become this toxic environment where there's a senior team and a junior team, and everybody hates sort of dealing with this contrast.
You know
Um,
what I just pasted, by the way, a link to developer stages. What this was what I mentioned beforehand. But
mhm.
what does a senior developer do to a team in a positive way? And this is, let's say, to I think I described it in one of the articles as well. And I had those discussions a lot with teams, with my teams, with other teams, with other companies.
Mhm.
When you start to scale, and scale means, for example, let's take just 4 people.
Yeah.
You have 4 people in a team, 2 juniors, 2 seniors. How
Mhm.
many teams can you create out of that? That's easy. You can actually create 2 teams out of that, because you have 2 people who understand the entire process, long term, short term. So
That's
you
not
can,
obvious for a lot of people,
yeah,
right?
but you
So
need to have that. So
what?
you can't
Okay,
create 3 teams out of that. It's
because
not
you don't have
possible.
enough seniors.
Right. Because
Yes.
if you don't do that, if you would create 3 teams, you would
Mhm.
end up with one team is just a junior developer. And
Mhm.
this team can't grow or can't keep up with the other teams. And it would
Mhm.
have the problem that this.
Uh,
The,
Adrian, let's. I have a lot of these stories.
yeah.
Let's just start with a clear example. We're a startup. We have 4 people on the team.
Mm-hmm.
One person a little bit more project management oriented, and then there's 3 people who are considered senior, 2 backend, 1 frontend, or 2 backend, 1 mobile. Let's say that's our starting point. And now management says we need to grow the team. 2 more people, please, next year.
Mm-hmm.
Now the problem is, for whatever reason, you find it very hard to find like a really proper senior engineer on the market. What do you do?
This is a good question. This
That's
is basically a question that I know that some companies promote a person who's now the senior. Um,
exactly where I was
There's
going.
a
Yes. So
pay
what
grade
happens?
senior now,
Yeah,
but you
they
are no
said,
senior. This is a
yeah,
problem.
yeah. They said
So
so you
yeah,
have a
of course.
specialist, you have 1 front end person or 1 mobile person, and you have 2 backend engineers, once both of them, all of them are senior. And you need to hire, and for whatever reason you can't get the same caliber of engineer. You can't get the
So
same caliber of
what?
enthusiast.
So I had something very similar today in a session, where let's say I would start with 2 things. I had first of all the very similar problems in my company.
Everybody
Um,
does.
yeah, because as soon as I went out of the hands-on business and go to, CTO, CEO kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
I suddenly my own expertise of 24 years, or it was to the time around 20 years,
Left the
was
team.
was suddenly not there in a
Yes.
on a regular basis anymore. So
Yes.
occasionally in a form of once a week mentoring thing, yes, but not on
Mm-hmm.
like I haven't seen those things anymore. And suddenly the, let's say, the average developer,
Mm-hmm.
people who trained with me in the past, who were juniors back then, were
Mm-hmm.
suddenly the seniors. And there's a problem with that because there's suddenly a huge change, and people were used to work in a way where there's someone, who knows all these things, who takes care of, who have this observing factor, this monitoring of everything, and suddenly these newer persons don't do it like that because they are not used to it, haven't learned it yet, and this is the kind of
They're
problem. So
Gen Z versus millennials. I constantly run into these kinds of cultural issues as well.
and you basically there's a, let's say, a gap, there's a missing part now, and
Mm-hmm.
this is the same with the scenario you just said. And and the second example was that I worked with a team today that was actually exactly that. So you had basically no senior in that team, but the team was about to make large decisions. And I have that so often with my own team, with other teams as well. Everyone is doing those long-term decisions without realizing it. And this is the point. Senior developers know that they are doing long-term decisions.
Yeah.
And as soon as everyone in the team just looking at you and saying, okay, those are long-term decisions, then you have no senior in the team, which is
Mm-hmm.
totally fine. It's not like if you are not a senior, you are not a good developer. That's nonsense. It's
Mm-hmm.
about just your level of experience. And this
Mm-hmm.
is the reason why, in my opinion, you only need to have one senior in a team. You don't need to have five seniors in a team of five. One senior is
If
totally
you're
enough.
setting that up, yeah, if you're setting that up from the get-go,
Yeah.
Anjana mentions, she says she's managing herself, good on domain knowledge, always learning so I keep up with latest technologies,
Hmm.
right? So even somebody who's self-managed, they have already, Anjana, I also find this as well. I can stay up to date with the domain as much as I want, but really what I need to practice is just keeping up with the frameworks. Everybody wants to be sort of ahead. Like, what should I learn? It's like, it doesn't matter what you should have done. You should be learning what your company will use next. That's it. Because nobody really understands it at the point where you learn it. Like, really, really understands it. It can happen that it is the technical skill is acquired at the job. That's normal. I don't know. I'm a polyglot. If you tell me we're using Ruby, I can lead a team that uses Ruby, no problem. I never
Okay.
used Ruby a lot, but I have no problem adopting it, right? Because it's the architectural thinking, the business acumen, and the sort of the basic engineering skill and the experience with it that is really problem solving oriented. The rest is just coding. Now the issue is that if you go back to the example, this cultivation part, right? Because what can happen, I'm not saying it will, because it is already a little bit toxic, but what can happen is that let's say you have a certain level of seniors and juniors, and people mix up this idea of A players hire A players, B players hire C players. People think what this means is that seniors hire seniors and mid levels hire juniors. That's not what
Mm-hmm.
it is.
Mm-hmm.
You can have an A player who's a junior,
Mm-hmm.
no problem, right? So the whole reason of hiring A players means that if I hire a junior, I want to hire the best junior,
Just
right?
Camila
So
isn't here today.
yes,
We haven't mentioned that, but she is an A player junior, in my opinion.
exactly. People
This
think that A player means that we only hire seniors.
exactly.
That's not the case, right? It's think about it from who has scouts. Americans in the NBA, right? They have scouts, right? So the N the N which one is it? NFL NHL, which is the hockey league. HL
NHL. Yeah.
HL NHL. The army recruits from NHL. That's why the sort of the funding chains are sports oriented, right? So sports organizations get a lot of funding from the U.S. Army, from the military, because they're already doing that sort of filtering of like we are filtering A-level players, or we have like some kind of certification for physical ability, for physical prowess. And then you just want, okay, physical prowess, check. Now give me the smartest people. And give me the smartest people who can work in a team. And collective sports allow that kind of separation. Now, when we talk about hiring A-level players, what do we do? What do we do in what is messed up in our recruitment process? We want a team player. What do we do in the recruitment process? What do engineering managers and recruiting managers usually do? They sit them in a room by themselves and ask them to solve a stupid problem by themselves. That is the worst way of recruiting someone. I always say, just invite them into the team. I now started practicing this in my coaching. When I have the leader that I'm coaching, if they say, Dennis, I want to recruit somebody, I would like your input, I just say, just invite them into one of our coaching calls.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is the most realistic feeling of what they'll get, of what it is to work on this team and what it is for the team to work with them. And we just invite them into one of our coaching calls. We are solving a problem. We just pull them in. I just do a quick disclaimer with the team that, oh, we have a person coming in who hasn't signed an NDA. So, no code on screen, no privileged information. And we just work with this person. We obfuscate the problem enough so that they can help.
Mm-hmm.
Then we just have a conversation with them. And usually the feedback is from them, oh, this actually feels very real. Like this is what it feels like to work with this team, to be collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
And usually that's the best recruitment strategy. So that's what I bring to the table when we're sort of talking about cultivating talent and cultivating sort of an engineering culture. Started the recruitment process. If your recruitment process is 6 different solo calls where somebody is isolated in a box and they're solving some technical problems with somebody that they might not even have, that they not have even have a relationship with, it's a waste of time. Especially if that person is just a senior from some other team, if the seniors are recruiting.
Yeah.
Because that's nonsense, right? It's just the team who recruit somebody, and then, mark somebody as a candidate for recruitment, like a potential candidate, that not just something stupid like AI vetted, but actually go talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
And then try to get them into 1 or 2 teams. If you interview them with 2 teams, let them choose one of the 2 teams. If you interview them with senior personnel from like different parts of the company, but they only have a role in one team, then that's nonsense. I've been in situations a lot of times where people
start with the attitude, right?
Yes.
When a person is willing to basically integrate oneself into a team, it's basically no problem to do that. So every form of employment is actually, or in most cases, a form of long-term employment. Otherwise, it's contracting or freelancing. And when you have long-term in mind, in my opinion, you should go for the character, for the integratability, for the cultural aspects. And let's say, as Jonathan Schultz, we need to get him on this show once. He's a recruitment strategist. He said, skills are a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But cultural is something you cannot really invoke in a person. Someone fits into the cultural requirements or it doesn't fit. It takes years to change someone in regards of mindset and stuff like this into a team. But skills are learned in some months, and when you take a look into employment, you talk about long term. There's no like, oh, I just employ you for 2 months. This is contracting. And
Adrian, we have a comment actually from one of our newer guests, who is Slovenian, one of the people who I've invited, Gregor Drev. Gregor, I can't see your comment on StreamYard because I think you have your profile privacy settings set up to high. But I'm just going to read out your comment if you don't mind. So Gregor says, Gregor's a general manager. He says, hi, in our company, C.SI, which translates to everyone, Slovenia, from Slovenia. We are an agency for digital marketing. We have a programmer team, and who never said, I do not know. So we always get a solution and develop it. We have a knowledge and 20 years of experience for SEO optimization and customer blah, 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 for franchiser for SEO optimization and web solution. And they are, okay. So it's just Gregor introducing himself. But he says that they have 20 years of knowledge And they're sort of they're embracing a culture of we don't want I don't know to be a conversation stopper, and I think that's a good attitude. Where you don't want somebody who says, "Hey, can we do this? I don't know," and then the conversation stops. Like that's the worst. Somebody asks you for an estimate, and you say, "I don't know." It's okay that you say, "I don't know," but the conversation shouldn't stop there. And sometimes the either the CEO or the recruitment manager or somebody who's dealing with budget, they say, "Hey, how many people do we need to hire this year?" I say, "I don't know," and then the conversation stops. Like, I don't know should be the beginning of the conversation, never the end of it, because otherwise you're not really addressing real business problems.
It should be the problem that you don't know it, but it shouldn't be the solution
Yeah.
because it's no solution. Yeah, I know what you mean. It does make sense. Yes.
Raul says almost all hiring processes accept some hard skills with a minimum amount of years of experience as a filtering candidate. I already hired people without that mostly because the candidate had great soft skills. Exactly. We often just check the soft skills. I always say I have a lot of engineering managers asking me, Dennis, how should I recruit? Like, what is a non-stupid way of recruiting somebody? And I always tell them, just go into the have a conversation with them, invite them into the team to share some collaborative experience with the team. And you want to answer two questions. Will it suck to work with this person? And what can you learn from them? That's it. That's it. If it will suck to work with this person, no. And if it won't suck to work with this person and you have something to learn from them, sure, hire them. Because the worst thing is when you say, "Oh, I don't think I can learn anything from them, but I need extra hands." Don't hire. It's a waste of time, right? Because if you establish you as a manager, you as a leader, if you establish a role where you subconsciously say, "I have nothing to learn from you," then you will subconsciously infantilize this person. You will always think of them as lesser. So you will label them as a junior, or if you're a senior, maybe you'll label them mid-level, or maybe you're a senior software engineer or a tech lead, and they're a software engineer, right? So there's something missing to their label.
Where's the point where you say, for clearance now, that you can learn something from a person when we stay in the context, for example, of a very young junior developer? What
Mm-hmm.
can you, as a person with 20 plus years of experience, learn from a person with 2 months of experience?
That's a great question. I think the learning experience really is what, not so much. It's not so much that they are teaching me something, but I will learn something. I will create knowledge by working with them.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'll learn what it's like to work with somebody like them. Maybe I'll learn what it's like to work with a younger, less experienced engineer. Maybe I'll have to learn how to mentor them specifically, right? So maybe I'll have, one of my most interesting hires was we in back in First Blood, we acquired we were a sort of American Slovenian company, and we hired we acquired an engineer from Venezuela who has created a product that was very similar to what we were building, and they built it alone.
Mm.
And they wanted to escape the regime changes and the sort of really the dysfunction of their economy. And our company said, "Okay, we're just gonna acquire you, like hire you, and fly you out to Slovenia," because they already had like Spanish relatives, so getting a EU citizenship wasn't that difficult. So we just helped them out on
Mm.
that part. But they were what you would consider a junior level engineer, but they had very good product understanding. And my question going in there was, what can we learn from him? Well, this is a very unique opportunity. This is somebody who has very limited programming knowledge, and we can learn what it's like to work with them. You can learn, the learning part can just be about diversity. It doesn't have to be about programming skill. The learning part can be, oh, what is it like to work with somebody who's also having to deal with moving away from their family and coming to Europe for the first time? What kind of problems are they facing? Like what kind of new nurture and new environment and new culture do we need to establish so that they specifically can be productive?
Mm.
That is what I can learn from them. I can learn what it's like to lead somebody like them. Maybe there are some cultural differences in temperament and ways of communication. Maybe we'll need to learn that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's nothing worse than this idea that me as a white male in my 30s from Slovenia hire other white males in their 30s from Slovenia, hoping that I won't have to learn how to communicate with them, right? So I am looking for somebody. Uh, I'm looking for somebody who is very similar to me,
Mm-hmm.
so I won't have to learn how to communicate with them.
That's a lazy way, right?
That's the lazy way. That's what I mean. Like, what do you have to learn from that? It's like you should hire somebody who's incompatible in a way that you've never worked with before, but not incompatible in a way that would block adoption of culture.
Mm-hmm.
Because you want your culture to change by the hire. You don't. The worst thing that you can do is hire for culture fit. Culture fit is the enemy to diversity.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to hire somebody who's similar to you. That's the worst thing because
Yeah.
they have nothing to give you.
What
You want
what
to
what?
make a hire, and by effect of the hire, you want to say, 5 years later, when we hired this person, a culture really improved.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
So
what you want to be able to say.
what I see often as well is when you get older and you get more senior, let's say, you often develop some form of tunnel vision as well. So you get used to a very
It's your
specific.
bias. Yeah,
Yeah,
your
yeah, this is a
biases.
bias. So
Yeah.
you are very specific in things. And junior developers can help you get out of that. For example, that
Absolutely.
what I see often in ours is that the junior developers often take the more the communication part with
Mm-hmm.
clients, for example, because they are not that good in coding now, but they are still be humans. They can communicate, and sometimes even better than seniors. And
Mm-hmm.
this is a point where I see, especially, let's say, coding focused seniors who
Mm-hmm.
lack senior skills or too much human skills
Yeah.
in form of software development. This is a good cohesion as well, where you really see that even younger generation developers can maybe communicate better than senior developers who were, let's say, isolated
Yeah.
a little bit of intrinsic people in the past. This is what I see often is a good fit as well. So I think the cultural aspects are the most important, and of course, when a senior is mentoring a junior, the senior is learning way more than he could learn on his own. This is the reason why I mentor so often,
Yeah.
is that
Same.
I actually need to, when you tell someone or answer someone
Mm-hmm.
questions which are very specific. In most of those cases, you don't know the exact answer, but you need
Yes.
to be able to get this answer in the next minute done right,
Mm-hmm.
explain them right, so that the asking person does have the right direction to go next.
Yeah.
And this
In
is a
favor.
very complicated and very
Yeah.
challenging process. And this challenge makes you as a senior better.
Yes.
This is the part where most are afraid of, to
Mm-hmm.
get those real questions. And you need to answer them ad hoc, even if you don't know the answer now, but you
Mm-hmm.
need to know the answer in the next minutes. And this is quite interesting, actually.
Yeah. Favor asked this as well. Like, why do you have to say I don't know at first? And I think this is the point. This is what you just explained. Like you start with I don't know because what the other person is, you know, if you're in software engineering, most of our problems are we are solving a problem that is not a commodity. So it is some kind of custom integration. Now, it's possible that you've done something similar, but not exactly like this. Maybe the business context constantly keeps changing. It might be the same login flow. It might be the same sort of acquisition funnel, e-commerce, optimization of some kind of conversion somewhere, or it can be a data pipeline with ETL. We're importing data, manipulating data, and exporting data, and then we're just updating some UI and pushing some data. Like the patterns can be similar, but the point is you don't want to steal the other person's problem. This is an answer to favor, because there are problems that are not knowable but what their solutions are at the time where you ask this question.
Mm-hmm.
So if I say, "Oh, I have this problem. What are we going to do about it?" I would say I don't know. Why is this worth solving? That is where I would start with. Just do root cause analysis immediately. And and that is to me where I would differentiate like a really senior professional who is also a software engineer from somebody who just has like senior level programming skill. There's a lot of engineers out there who have gone from junior to mid level,
Mm-hmm.
got stuck there for 5, 10 years, and then just stagnated at that level. And now, just out of virtue of having had a lot of experience in the industry, they call themselves senior. But they never really got past to the point of adopting business understanding. We had this conversation with Brian Finster last week, and he highlighted this very well. Like the most important thing about being a senior is you understand the business in which you're working.
Mm-hmm.
You can explain the business processes. If you had to do this process manually, without code, what does it look like? Why is it profitable? What problem does it solve? Who does it solve it for? Why
Mm-hmm.
do they care? Why do they pay money? What is the limit about how much money are they prepared to pay for this? How long are they prepared to wait for a solution? What is the latency here? Like, does it have to be immediate? That's the point. That's the point we're trying to uncover. You, as an engineer, need to understand that. Brian mentioned building bridges is not about knowing how concrete works. It's about knowing how the problem of crossing a river, a body of water, can be solved.
Mm-hmm.
Because that problem becomes more and more complex the wider the river is, the deeper the river is, the faster the current of the river is.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the main characteristics which require a completely startup, scale up, or enterprise level solution to those
Yeah.
kinds of problems. But it has nothing to do with your understanding of concrete. Same thing here with programming skill. What problem you're solving for the business has nothing to do with your level of React skill, has nothing to do with your level of Symfony understanding, has nothing to do with your level of Node.js understanding. It has everything to do with the level of how you understand the business processes that you're dealing with. And then I would even say a really good professional is focusing on creating software that solves problems for users rather than being the script kiddie who's constantly stuck in the support pipeline. Because there's a lot of engineers who create a product that is just barely like below standard. It's barely MVP. And then customer support just bombards them with issues.
Mm-hmm.
And then they are sort of serving the customer as a constant fixer. Fix this, like serve the customer directly rather than fixing the software that causes the bad experience. If you're stuck in this loop of just fixing problems for customers, you're not a senior engineer. You're just a coder.
There I want to catch in really quick, especially for the audience now. Anjana, Favor, Raul, Thomas, and all the others.
There's a few we missed, so I
So
do want to set a
mentoring
reminder.
is not only for seniors.
Yeah.
Mentoring is something seniors should do in order to, you know, improve because
Mm-hmm.
there's not much you can do then anymore except that. And but you, as for example, on your stages, is it important as well? So who of you is doing mentoring on a regular basis or have done mentor on some point in time? Or do you or maybe you don't do any mentoring, but please give us a little bit of feedback of how do you actually handle mentoring, because mentoring is one of those key aspects to get
Mm-hmm.
from the junior stage actually to the next stage,
Yeah.
because as long as you only ask for help, you are definitely a junior. And you know, when you know that you actually try to help other juniors, you are most likely not a junior anymore.
Yeah.
And this is maybe something where we can play a little bit with your experiences. So please tell us about your experience here. Yeah. And maybe so we've talked a lot about now that or we actually when we talk about the business aspects for a moment again,
Mm-hmm.
so we have engineering leads here in this audience as well,
We do.
um, and we had this example of splitting teams.
Yeah.
Um, when we want to grow teams now, we should have some form of seniority in their team. And seniority does not mean one person who know how to solve everything and do everything and
Mm-hmm.
doing the heroics on Saturday. This is not the idea of the senior. What is the senior there is the person who is next to the team leader, or maybe it's the team leader, in that case could be possible as well, but it's some form of guidance, mentoring cornerstone in the
Yep.
team to actually grow that team. So
Yep.
again, to make that clear, a team without that level of seniority is actually not able to grow. It is even likely that the product will fail at some point
Mm-hmm.
because there you might run into dead ends, you might run into unrevertible problems with your application. So it's very important again to point out that you need to have a senior at the team, which
Mm-hmm.
does not mean that you only have one junior because there is some kind of capability. So how many, this is an interesting question now, maybe to you as well, but I would to quickly start with is how many junior developers can be on the team without having average developers when you have only one senior in the team? Just to
Mm-hmm.
play a little bit around with examples. What would you
Yep.
say about that?
I mean that was the point of the exercise, right? Where we have a lot of seniors and you want to split it because from the perspective of the senior engineer, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's this idea that oh, I feel super productive when I'm surrounded by seniors. Right? It's like I'm not the smartest person in the room anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because people often say like if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And that's what I mean. If you have nothing to learn from your juniors, then you're in the wrong room. Right? So even when you hire juniors, you need to make sure that if you're hiring A players, that your juniors are also A players.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can assure you, if you hire a junior A player, if you have 20 years of experience, you will learn something from them.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. That's where it starts. That's why I mentioned that. Because really the point isn't so much um, this idea that seniors want to work with seniors because it makes their life easier. The problem is what is the nature of the challenges that the team is facing? Why are we splitting the team? Let's say we have more workload. We have achieved product viability, product market fit. Now we want to scale it up and sort of deal with the problems of scale,
Mm-hmm.
of actually widening the audience and just opening up the money hose and creating demand. We've proven that we are capable of producing demand and meeting the demand and providing value. Now let's scale the demand. Let's it's the same way as when Apple releases a new iPhone. They're not successful because they build great products. That's one part of the equation. They are successful because they know how to create demand. They know how to say, okay, that was the old iPhone. New iPhone is much better.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's the point. They know how to create demand. And it's one thing to create an MVP, but to say, okay, next year's version will be a lot better. Then you'll have a lot more people using the system. That's what you need to prepare for. That's why we're splitting the team. That's why we're recruiting. Now, when that happens, one very unintuitive emotional thing happens. The seniors might say, oh, god damn it. Now I'm surrounded with seniors. Next year I'm going to be surrounded with juniors. I don't want this. That is a very natural
Mm-hmm.
defense mechanism where you might not want to be able, you might say, well, I can do it alone, but if I have to mentor somebody, I will slow down. I used to be in this mentality constantly where we were doing some weird, stupid heroics and I didn't know better. I thought, okay, if I hire somebody,
Yeah.
I want to hire somebody who I enjoy working with and then I'll split the workload. But if I hire somebody who I don't enjoy working with, then they'll just slow me down. And then I'll be constantly stuck in this mindset of they're slowing me down, they're slowing me down, they're slowing
But
me
you
down.
just point out that the person you don't work with, like working with, is basically a person you need to mentor, right?
I mean, in both cases, it's a thing like the ownership, accountability, and incentives have to be aligned, right? So an issue that happens with when you're when you're hiring somebody who you don't want to work with, I would say that's already a bad hire. That's already a problem to solve. I mean, maybe mentoring isn't not, doesn't solve it. I don't know. It's very peculiar. It's very specific to the context. What I would, however, emphasize is that this idea that if you hire somebody who just struggles, maybe they're just very much excited but also insecure of being at a new job, but they have a lot of things to offer to the company. I would say the best thing you can do for them is to make sure their onboarding process is as clean as possible. So drop everything you're doing. There is no, I have to do some important task and also I will spend 10% of my time onboarding you. No, spend 100% of your time onboarding this person. Onboard them by onboard them by virtue of giving them your task. If you have something really important to work on, give them the task and collaborate with them. That
I would say
that,
if
that
you
is
if
where I
you
would. Sorry,
if
yeah, go
if
ahead.
you if you are a senior developer and you have only yourself in mind, your own performance, your own getting things done idea,
That's it.
then
That's
you
it.
are not really a senior developer for me,
That's it.
because you don't care about the team effort.
That's
And
it. And
this is an example I actually struggle with at the moment, not myself, but with
mm-hmm.
another person. I really hate that problem,
Yeah.
because let's say you are a senior and you have in your team as well
Mm-hmm.
are working one or two average developers and let's say three junior developers. And
Yep.
you as a senior developer spend most of your time mentoring others, helping others, doing code
Yes.
reviews, doing code enhancements,
Looking for opportunities
enable,
to make others around you more productive.
and then the overall team will accelerate.
Yes.
Accelerate. You will be, your doing will have so much more impact than if you
Absolutely.
just want to optimize your own last typing
Mm-hmm.
speed and I don't know refactoring skills. Those are this doesn't cut the mustard then anymore.
Mm-hmm.
This is the 80-20 rule, Pareto principle. So it's basically about that. On some point in time, after let's say 6, 7, 8 years, you reach
Mm-hmm.
that point where you cannot really learn that much anymore just by going like you were going. You learned the most of the stuff.
Yeah.
Then it's time, to get the other 80%, let's say to 140% in this case,
Mm-hmm.
you need to mentor. This is the
Yes.
only way you can actually grow yourself. It's to help others and to try to replicate and multiplicate what you already have done to others. And this
Mm-hmm.
is the natural way of thinking. This is actually not something which is dedicated to software development.
Mm-hmm.
This is very natural. So I am father, I am
Mm-hmm.
doing that at home as well. So I am happy that my children will hopefully become a better person and more efficient than I do. So I spend
Absolutely.
a significant amount of time helping them to get better instead of myself to try
Mm-hmm.
to become better in something,
But
because
that also means that you sometimes have to withhold help, right? Because being a parent myself now, one of the hardest lessons is to not help my kids with something that I know that they can do by themselves. To let them struggle for a bit and then help them out, sort of help them, just get them unstuck and then let them figure it out.
exactly
And that's the
don't do
hardest part.
that. Don't do it for them. You are not a
Yeah, like
servant
don't
in
do it
this
in
case.
front of them and force them to watch.
Yeah.
That is the worst way of mentoring. Because that is what a natural junior will ask for. I just want to shadow you for a bit. That's okay if you're shadowing just for a bit. But then you as a senior, you need to interrupt this flow and say, okay, now I'm not typing code anymore. Now you're typing code, and we'll do it together.
Mhm.
Because that's how you want to onboard them, right? Max also mentions knowledge sharing everywhere you can is a way of mentoring, in my opinion. It is not always just having one-on-one meetings with someone to tell them to do something. That one is great, but it is not the only way. He follows up by saying having knowledge sharing culture as a developer or a company helps people to grow at a much faster pace because of the competition that is shaped, and people are motivated to start learning new things and share it with others. I completely agree.
So we are at the moment sharing knowledge, right?
Yeah.
So we are very used to what Max just said, and this was the reason why I actually
Thank you,
start to
Max.
blog, and this is very important. So I tell that to most juniors that they should start to blog right now.
Mm-hmm.
Why? It's not about becoming successful with your blog and earning money passively. No, no, no. It's not about that. It's about you. It's about manifesting your learned stuff already
Yeah.
for yourself. You learn by doing that, but because you
Mm-hmm.
write for others, and others will learn that. It's about that, and this is very important to understand. As soon as you start to do things for others, you
Yeah.
will grow. The others will grow. As long as you only do it for yourself, others won't grow by that. and you won't grow. You will grow only a little bit.
Yeah.
Think
Raul
of
mentions a
think
key
wisely
point.
there.
Yeah, Raul mentions a key point here that I had to struggle with as well in my career. I enjoy mentoring others. It is just amazing and life changing. Although I had issues with engineering managers complaining about the time I dedicated to being there for the team. I agree. This is the hardest part. This is the hardest part where at a certain point you need to learn how to balance efficacy and learning because a real agile organization is optimized for learning. Now, it is optimized for learning better ways of building software that the business needs for business reasons.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that I can just sit in front of the whiteboard 24/7 and just learn and accumulate knowledge. Because that is not, there's a difference between knowledge and knowing. Knowledge is when I just accumulate theory, but knowing, like a deep sense of knowing, is when I learn something very theoretical and immediately go and apply it. That's why I like initiatives like Advent of Code, which is running right now, adventofcode.com, where for every day from now till Christmas, there's a new coding challenge to be done. So you'll probably have to learn some new algorithm, some new language, or some new paradigm and solve it quickly and apply it. Right? So it's not just theoretical. You learn by actually solving problems. And the really important aspect of being in a learning centric organization is by making sure, okay, what do we need to you constantly ask the question, what do I need to learn to build this? What do I need to learn to manifest this? What do I need to learn to solve this problem? What do I need to learn to automate this solution? What do I need to learn to ask better questions? What do I need to learn to mentor my juniors better? That's what I mean when I said at the beginning, don't hire somebody that you have nothing to learn from. Nothing to learn from, not from the perspective of they can't teach you anything, but nothing to learn from in the sense that they will not stimulate any learning oriented questions. Now, what Raul
I would
mentions,
rephrase it.
there
I would
might be,
rephrase it. Um,
yeah, go ahead.
don't hire a person um, when you can't learn something by working with that person.
Okay, that's a
So
good way. Yeah.
it is better because it disconnects the necessity of that this person does something better than you. It's just
Mm-hmm.
this person challenges you in such a way that you
Yes.
evolve
Yes.
while working with that person.
Yes. I
Yeah.
mean,
So
the reason why people hate hiring senior, because I see these ads constantly. We want a junior entry level full stack React developer with 4 years of experience.
yeah.
And then everybody says that's mid level. Okay, 3 years. That's nonsense, right? Because I would argue, I'd wager that most of these companies who have such silly requirements have a ridiculously sucky onboarding process, where by virtue of onboarding, the
Yeah.
person getting hired learns nothing, and the person doing the onboarding also learns nothing, right? Because the whole point of the onboarding process that you can learn, that you can immediately adopt, is to learn, okay, once I hire somebody, my number one priority is making sure what can I learn about the onboarding process? What can they learn about the onboarding process? And how can they improve the onboarding process? One of the things that I like to do with new hires is just tell them if there's anything missing in the onboarding process, fix it, and you'll be onboarding the next person,
Yeah.
right? Like that's the best way of sharing accountability because they have they have ownership of the problem, they have accountability, and they have an incentive, right? They have an incentive. They will be able to help the next person who's coming in line. The worst thing that you can do is have a centralized repository of knowledge and say, I tried to follow the onboarding process, but it sucks, so I sort of kind of figured it out for myself. Okay, now put it back to the community, please, and you'll onboard the next person because they'll have the same problem. No, I'm busy now with these tasks. We already had this one. We had this comment.
I know, but Raul, I want to ask you a question. Is
Mm-hmm.
pair programming appreciated in your company,
Mm-hmm.
in your team?
Yeah,
Please, if you can, please answer that, because I think this is connected to that question.
it
So if
is.
mentoring isn't, let's say, if there's no budget for mentoring, for learning, for this kind of stuff, there is most likely no budget for pair
Mm-hmm.
programming as well. So it just would be interesting for me to know.
Thomas has a comment. I'm mentoring about 2 years now, coding and not coding. I mentored about 10 for about 10 years. He also says if newbie is new in development but not new in life, he will bring other thinkings of different working styles. Also, if the newbie is younger, you can learn the culture of this age, of their sort of generation. And I agree with that. Like they have younger developers especially, and especially with introducing diversity into the company, there's a lot of things to learn. There's so many things to learn. But to connect it a little bit more with our agenda, we're sort of at the halfway point for today. It is picking up, and it's nice to see we have about 15 people still alive.
What is the
Um,
next point of the agenda? I haven't found the document.
it's self management. It's self management. So I really get inspired when I see Gabe Newell talk about this. Gaben um, from Valve Software, the people who built Half-Life, Dota, Steam, etc. Right. So
Mhm.
they are one of the most flat software hierarchies in the industry.
Yeah.
They are one of the sort of they are one of the, let's say, most unique models of how they work, and Gabe constantly attributes this to this acumen of, he says that he's a believer. He fosters this idea that all engineers, all professionals on the team are capable of self-management. You don't have to have manager in your job title to manage things. You can manage your time. You can manage yourself. You can manage your impulses. You can manage how you communicate. There is always this idea of self management. And I would say what Raul mentioned, that is also one of the key elements to sort of more broadly seniority. Is if somebody says, oh, engineering managers complain about the time I dedicate to being there for the team, I would say, well, how are you managing this complaint? How are you managing your reaction to this complaint? Right? Because if you're self-managed, you'll just say, no, I think this is a net benefit. I will do it anyway. Like I will do it even if they disagree, because this is my decision. Like how I spend my time. Once you hire me, how I spend my time is my decision. That's the whole point.
Mhm.
Now the problem is if I don't understand what the business is doing,
Mhm.
then I'll do something stupid, and that will be attributed as waste. Right? So a manager might tell me, Dennis, you had a budget for this project. You wasted the budget. What are we going to do about this?
How large is Valve these days?
That's a good question.
So is it a company? I don't know. I don't have a feeling. So I know them forever, but
Let's
and
see.
what's about Half-Life 3?
Let's
Another
not. Let's
question.
not. Let's not go there. Let's not go there. I don't know how many engineers they have.
Okay, but because my ideas are revolving around the idea of if you have a team where everyone is self-managed,
Valve has about 1,200 employees. I'm not sure how many of those are engineers, but it gives you a sense of their
yeah,
their
I would call it a
scope.
mid-level company, mid-sized company. Still,
hmm
it's not a large one. I mean, it's not a
I
small one
mean,
either.
they're a 10 billion company. Like it's not something to scoff at.
Mhm. Yes, okay, but hmm. I think when you try to become self-managed, so when I take a traditional team now,
hmm
the most problems I see with those teams when I meet them or meet my own teams is that not everyone does follow this idea in a natural way. So many people are looking for leadership, for active leadership.
Yeah.
Um, and it is quite an effort to get the people motivated to do things by their own. It is
hmm
quite hard, to be honest. And I think when I take a look in the last, I don't know, 20 years, then this was every month, every week of my life a topic. And I find it hard, quite challenging. So of course it's about culture. I talk a lot about culture because this is a concerning topic because I understand that a culture where everyone is first of all supportive in a way.
hmm
When you are supportive, as I said at the beginning, you are the senior type of person who is actually giving more than you take. Then, of course, you have the foundation for such a culture because if you can manage others, you can manage yourself as well. So
Yes.
it must be a foundation. So you can't only be managing yourself only. So managing self-management is based on helping others. It's actually, you need to have that in place, otherwise it won't work.
It's like this idea of servant leadership.
Right, exactly. But everyone should have this in some
Yes,
way. And
everybody is capable of this. It doesn't have to. It doesn't have to be stipulated in your job title.
so when you have a team of five, let's break it down to smaller teams.
Hmm?
Um, then in most traditional teams, you have one strong leader and four people who are following.
Yes,
This is the most
an
seen
an
pattern.
informal, a leader who leads by informal authority.
Exactly. And when you have the other pattern, like we take the Valve pattern now,
Hmm.
with a self managed pattern, which means that you don't have a specific leader, you
Hmm.
have common goals, and everyone is doing everything to get to the goal, which is a shared effort. So everyone doesn't need to be that great leader, just needs to
Hmm.
manage him or herself and a little bit beyond that. Should be
It's more like a project, like a school project. I think that's a much better way of describing the Valve.
but
Uh,
in all the pro school project I was part of, there were always two or three people sitting behind there and doing something differently.
yeah. No, but
So
my point is, the whole idea of self-managed teams is that the teams own a solution to a problem.
yeah.
They're fully accountable. They decide what the solution will be. They are accountable for the budget, and they are accountable for all the decisions going into making sure that this happens. That is the best case scenario. Now, the consequence of having such teams is that the team immediately disbands after the problem is solved. That is a crucial ingredient, right? You can't have, you said there is no informal leader in the Valve team. That's true, but not because there's a team and there's no leader. There's no leader because there's no team.
Mm-hmm.
Because they only get together by virtue of collaboratively solving a problem together.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, what team do I need to form to solve this problem? That's where this decision starts, right? And a lot of those, if I go back to this sort of all senior sort of founding engineer startup with 5 employees, the problem that starts there is that
Yeah.
they never experienced forming a team for a problem. They just experienced the company is a team and team equals company.
Mm-hmm.
They never
How
experienced this idea that there is some formality to be disbanded, so processes to be eliminated so that they can be restarted in some other way. Like that is
it's
the most
basically the
important
idea
part.
of a task force, right? You create a task force to solve a specific temporary
I
problem.
don't want to get too much into the nitty gritty of terminology because then we have to talk about the tribal model from Spotify that Spotify doesn't use. That's also in the Accelerate book. And then you have these ideas of squads and teams and what's squad and what's tribe and what's a team. Like I don't want to get into that nitty gritty. The point is that the team is not formed around. You know how most teams are formed in companies, especially startups, by seating order. You're sitting next to this person. You're part of a team, or you're sitting next to this person who's also working with you on this product. You're doing back end, they're doing front end, or you two are sitting in the same room.
And how
So
do
you
you know
are
that in
now a
remote
team.
work?
With remote work, it's usually which huddle do you attend? Yeah, like which room has the main meeting. It's very funny, because teams are defined by their. I mean, teams that are, let's say, company organizations that are
Mm-hmm.
dysfunctional are defined by which recurring rituals bring the team together into the same space.
But I don't think that's wrong.
It's not wrong, but it has to be intentional, right? So
Yeah.
if you accidentally do this, if you force everybody in the organization to attend some weird recurring meetings, it's possible that those members are actually 7 or 6 different teams without you being aware of it.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
I have that. I have that as well. So, for example, a real life thing is, so we have clients, we have developers, and
Mhm,
some. So there are new projects to do, new features to build,
mhm.
and it is like we're talking in the morning, and suddenly it appears that these two people need to work together on this problem with that
Yes,
client, for example, as a
yes,
feedback cycle. And this is a new team, and in 3 days the teams are totally shuffled around, and
yes,
I
yes.
like that very much.
It's super
This
helpful.
is a form of agility, actually.
Yeah,
And
and
so
that is it.
yeah,
That's what agility is. It's identifying. It's having the nerve to say stop. allocating my personal time as if it's some kind of budget.
Yeah.
That's where seniority starts. It's like, stop planning my work. I need to sit down, stop giving me solutions, stop delegating tasks to me, start saying no. If you have that kind of manager, because a lot of managers are micromanagers that are infantilizing their developers. If you are in such an environment, you have to identify that you're in such an environment and learn how to deal with that environment. I was I was in situations where I was that manager. I was in situations where I was that junior. I was in situations where I was accidentally exposed to somebody who I learned how to deal with the manager so I could manage myself, but they didn't. And then the manager managed them, and I also started showing evidence of this kind of behavior, and it was not very practical. So we all
Yeah.
needed to learn how to work better together, and that's what agile is about. Agile is about constantly learning how to improve the way in how we build software
And not Scrum.
constantly. It doesn't stop. It isn't what should we adopt, which process should we adopt. No, the point is anything preventing us from learning. If we know that something's wrong, is something preventing us on acting on that knowledge? That's the important part that really comes about self-management. If an engineering manager tells you, "Hey, I didn't allocate time for you to pair program," who had that comment? Somebody had that comment.
This was Raul
Oh, it's
asking
oh,
that
it's
question.
yeah. Is this Thomas?
Now, this is
Is
Thomas mentioning that this is what I wanted to talk about.
yeah.
This comment because um, Thomas says mentoring and pair programming is nothing to do with extra budgeting. It's all in processes included. It's
Mm-hmm.
actually it's
It's automatically.
automatically included in all budgets. And I
I
would
agree.
say here's a problem with that statement. This
Mm-hmm.
statement is an ideal. It's a what you want to have in a team, but the teams, no matter which companies, have constraints in the business area. They are part of a bigger thing. They're part of company, budget, clients, customers, and in most teams I know, especially traditional companies, there is no budget and there's no budget included. And when you this
Agreed.
was my reason why I asked the question to Raul about pair programming.
Mm-hmm.
Most companies I would ask us, oh, we have a task, we need to get this done, and I would say, oh, or suggest, hey, let's do this in a pair programming, and everyone would say, no, we don't have money for that.
Yeah.
And it's basically this is the problem. So what we see here, it is an ideal. It should be like that, but oftentimes, especially in smaller companies, that's the constraint of smaller companies. Pair programming is more a form of mentoring, let's say, a mentoring method than the standard method. I know that there are larger teams, larger, more successful companies who
Mm-hmm.
do pair programming as a basis, especially when it comes to extreme programming and all this kind of stuff. When you only do four eyes programming, you always switch. One is typing, one is telling, and you do that basically in hackathons. You have that quite often as well.
Yeah.
And this is a very efficient form, but it's twice as expensive. Period. It is twice as expensive.
That's the
And
point.
and if your business model doesn't provide the budget, you can't do it. So it's not sorry,
Yes.
it's not included. It's an ideal, and I understand, I appreciate it that it should be like that. But in most, and it's this is my question, that in most, or my statement, it is okay when you have a company, let's say startup, 5 people, a
Mm-hmm.
traditional company, 30 people, if you work with those and you have 10% of your week for mentoring, it's already a great step towards becoming better, because you
I
have
mean, I would
10% of your time for the entire team allocated for learning. That's a start. That's good. And that's affordable by every company.
exactly. I mean, you know, if you understand Price's law and you sort of research how high performance teams work, is you want to add some kind of downtime activity into your schedule,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you want to make sure that your teams, even juniors, that they do not spend 100% of their time doing the hard stuff. They do not operate well if they run constantly at 100% capacity. So you need to plan in secondary activities into their schedule to prevent them from reaching 100%. An engine that's revved up to 100 to max won't have, like an engine, a car engine has a optimal speed, has an optimal velocity. at like what RPM, in what gear, at what shape of car is most fuel efficient. That's what you want to figure out. You want to figure out at what intensity, at what cadence, at what capacity planning your team is fuel efficient at, and then encourage them to stay at that efficiency, not beyond. Because I can assure you, it is not 100%. It is closer to 60 to 80%. So you want to fill up
Yeah.
that remaining part consciously with other activities, which ideally should be collaborative in nature, not with bullshit meetings, but with collaboration where they get to decide how they were going to spend that, with tech talks, with improving quality practices and mentoring others. Like that is a good practice. However, in contrast to what you just said, Adrian, I do disagree with one little detail, is that pair programming and sitting next to somebody and helping them on a problem, that is not mentoring. That is collaboration. Collaboration does not need a budget. Now, this budgeting idea comes from um, comes from this idea of agency style ran startups, where you have a startup that at some point, because of lack of experience of how to manage an engineering culture, they start adopting project management practices. So not agile DevOps, but they adopt project management. And they start thinking about this idea of, okay, like what is the client? That's the client. Like that feature, let's say that's a client. Okay, what's the budget for that? And then they start thinking about this way of, oh, that person is on the project, that person is not on the project. Because that is where the really effed up culture happens. That is where all the toxicity comes from, where you start deciding you are on the project, you are not on the project. Those decisions should never be made. Never be made top down. Because really, what you should be focusing on instead is to communicate this isn't a project, this is a product. Which people in our organization will be the experts for that product? That's where you want to focus your attention. Is to decide, okay, if I have a senior here and I'm gonna surround them with 3 juniors, this team they are the experts for this product. I want them to become the experts for this product. Obviously, I can't hire somebody who already knows what this company is building, so we will have to build it. They will own the knowledge.
Maybe we should. I think two points. First of all, you mentioned that pair programming is not mentoring, and senior and a lot of juniors. And the same.
So pair
same
programming should not be coming from the sort of this mentoring budget.
But what I want to say is, there's a difference when a 20 years of experience senior do pair programming with a 2-month junior. It's a form of mentoring. It is.
Absolutely. Like anything you do with
you don't
it,
switch that much. It's more like
anything you do with that junior, that's going to be mentoring.
Exactly,
It's such a large difference.
Of course, it's not a form of mentoring. If we both would now sit there and code something, Half-Life 3, for example.
I mean, we could, but we would be switching around probably.
Exactly, but it is a form of, so we would learn, but it's more a form of collaboration to get things done.
Exactly.
It is more not.
It's more partnership,
exactly.
less.
If we contextualize it, pair programming can be a form of mentoring and can be a form of collaboration to get things done. So this is what I want to clear, and especially when you have this type of, when a senior developer should take care of others. Of course, this is then part of the budget, but it needs to be. Let's allocate it beforehand for this. So the team cannot just do that, because let's say, I know that especially in form of when you say autonomous teams, a team should decide that bottom up. I understand this, but oftentimes this isn't the case. So it's still an ideal again. And ideals. Hey, Grant. And in ideals, I love those ideals because I write a lot about them. And my problem is, it is harder to actually apply those ideals in your own company, in CTO fellowship programs with other companies where we help other organizations. There are so many reasons why those ideals are hard to apply. And when you say, okay, you have, for example, you go to a team And you have this setup. It's often so. You have one person who's really seasoned and several others who aren't, who are pretty new to that. And you say, oh, this senior can now do all this kind of mentoring, getting others into moving. And then they say, no, he needs to do the work. He's working late, and everyone else is just doing those. Yeah,
Yeah.
doing those little bit of CSS here, a little
I,
bit
you
of
know, I
JSON
saw
work.
this dysfunction being displayed often in the world, in the movie, The Social Network. It was about Facebook, about Meta, and
Yeah, I know.
they had this sort of dysfunction on screen where somebody would be plugged in. You know, this idea that I have my headphones on. I know I'm the expert. I have my headphones on. Don't bother me.
Mhm.
Right? I think that really highlights these sort of toxic heroics that are
Mhm.
permeating in our culture, at least for millennials, at least for engineers of my age, of my generation, where we were told that software is about solving problems, algorithmic problems, and oftentimes you'll have to go into your office and sit down and isolate yourself and solve the problem.
Yeah.
And in Eastern Europe, especially Eastern Southern Europe, that seems to be the sort of this main sort of ideal of heroism inside an engineering culture. And Valve is a very good example of the opposite of that, where Gaben even said he even assumed that is how software engineering should be. So he made it a point for every engineer to be having their own office space so they can go and isolate themselves. And what do they do instead? They position themselves in the most public open space possible that is large enough to handle a large group of people where they can self-organize.
Mhm.
And that was always my experience as well. I would always go to a couch. I would always go to like a table where I can meet with other engineers and sit down and solve a problem together.
Yeah.
I would very rarely like go away, sit in a corner, and focus on one problem for a very long time, because usually that was very wasteful. This idea that I will go and isolate myself for 4 hours or for a week, it is very destructive and it's very toxic in engineering cultures. And to build on your point that you mentioned, this idea that you need to get things done and that there is somebody who can do it better, I would say managers, especially now, managers, this is listen up. This is a little bit of free coaching now. Um,
Listen.
don't manage junior engineers.
Mm.
Don't manage them, because if especially if you're non-technical, if you're not going to be sitting down with them, right? Because how is the best way to nurture growth in an engineer? You give them ownership of a challenging problem. Now, that doesn't mean that you start solving it, and if you can't solve it, we'll give it to the senior. No, that's management. That's silly.
Yeah.
And even sillier is when you say, oh, this is a hard problem. We'll give it to the senior, and let's give the juniors an easy problem until they
Exactly.
learn. No, that's silly. That's management. If you
You,
have to
you, you only
assign,
get you basically you reduce the capability of the juniors to your own maximum as an engineer, sorry, as
exactly,
an
and
engineering manager in this case, because
what you
they
want is
cannot do more than you would be capable to.
exactly, and it comes from this sort of inferiority complex where you become anxious, where you give a task to a junior and you know they're not capable of doing it. That's the point. You empower them. You say, you need to learn how to deal with this,
Yeah.
and you have the entire team to support you. That's the point. Now, in organizations that are dysfunctional, this actually does happen.
Hmm.
You give the junior a task, which obviously anything you'll give them, they will not be capable of solving on their own.
Yeah.
But the problem is that everybody around them is too busy to help. That is the dysfunction. Where you're doing it half-assed. Where you're doing it, okay, I will give you a challenge.
Hmm.
You will be touching production code. I'm not giving you some weird nonsense bug fix. Right? So you should always, the litmus test should always be, would I give this task as a priority to my most capable engineer on the team? Would I empower them to focus on this and not on something else? If the
Yeah.
answer is no, you're just spoon feeding the junior engineer some easy task to work on because you have it in the backlog and you want some progress on it. That is nonsense.
You
That is
keep them as worker
infantilizing them.
notes, and they are not worker notes. They shall
Exactly,
become
exactly.
aspiring
They need to
senior
own.
developers themselves. So, what can you do that you make sure that your junior developers will outgrow you and become better than you? It's the
Yeah,
same as I mentioned before, as being a father or mother. Um, what can you do that others become better than you? First of all, you need to
yeah,
take care that you get better every day. So you need to
yes.
ask before you go to bed, free advice as well, before you go to bed, ask yourself, what have you
What did I
achieved
learn today?
today?
Yeah,
What have you achieved today which makes you better than yesterday? And the
yes.
next day, you need to ask yourself the same question.
Yeah,
And
what is
when
worth
you
celebrating?
exactly, and this is not senior, this is just normal.
This
And
is normal.
senior is
Yeah,
what have I done to my team that it
that they
basically
get
achieved
better.
something better
Yes,
today
yes,
than better than yesterday. And you
right.
need to, this is the basic idea of the continuous learner. And
Yes.
the senior continuous learner is the person who makes sure that the team or the people around are basically participating and having something from the sheer existence of yourself
Mm-hmm.
as a senior developer. Just that you are there, the cornerstone of the team. And this is
Mm-hmm.
the reason why I personally prefer, even in remote spaces, tools like GatherTown, where we have an open space. Everyone does have his space because of communication, but you
Mm-hmm.
can to every time just run into another space, share your screen, ask, and you get questions answered.
Mm-hmm.
And this is very important to always have the feeling that you can ask and you can just come to everyone to ask.
Yeah.
So isolation, sometimes in rare occasions it's necessary because you have an outage, a very severe problem which
Mm-hmm.
needs to be solved. Yes, but in normal cases you should always be focused on the team effort, the growth, and all this kind of stuff. This is
Mm-hmm.
extremely important to mention.
Mm-hmm. Max
Some
mentions it. It
Yeah.
dysfunction. In my own experience, unfortunately, we had a junior front-end developer who was working on a project, and I was responsible for mentorship. Due to the micromanaging of this upper level manager, things got ugly, and in the end, I was blamed for wasting time mentoring the person. This happens a lot in toxic cultures. Yeah, this is exactly what we mean. Like, the, mentoring should not be managed. Mentoring should be nurtured, right? So, you know what the best way of nurturing mentorship is? Make sure your most senior people in your team are not over capacity. Don't assign tasks to them. Stop managing them. Allow them to be self-managing. If they're not self-managing, they're not senior. You live in la la land. This idea of self-management, and maybe it's worth talking about the third point in our agenda, which is the habits of high-performing teams.
Mhm.
Is that high-performing teams? What they do is then they take this idea of not infantilizing juniors and they take it to the organizational level.
Yeah.
That is the key ingredient. And what do I mean by this? I have a very clear example. The the biggest gap in productivity comes from this idea that engineering and product are divorced. It comes from this idea that in the engineering department, I am a senior engineering person and a junior product person. And then there's somebody in the product department, or maybe this is the business owner or the CEO, they say, I'm a senior product person and I'm a junior engineering person. So I have no idea what this tech bullshit is, and you know it, but you don't understand product and you never will. That's why I'm making these decisions. That's the primary dysfunction that prevents companies from being agile. It's this idea that I am good in something and you're not, and you're good in something and I'm not, and it'll always be like this. That is the biggest dysfunction in software organizations. Because the high performing teams, what do? They flip this on the head.
Yeah, but this is a society problem which is displayed in our companies. When you take a look at movies, you always have the hero type of person who one
Yeah, that's a
specific
good point.
person does one specific thing, and anyone else basically cannot keep up in that area.
Yes,
And
yes,
this is
yes,
basically this is stupid. This is not
it is.
leaderism. This is stupidism.
Grant also mentions this, that this is a war room environment with
Yeah,
information radiators feels more dynamic. I think
exactly.
this is exactly a quote from devolve organizational structure. They also constantly use this idea of information radiators, right? Where you have product experts, a team that was a team that vertically owns a product. They radiate information about some subdomain in the company. They're easy to listen to, and it's easy to listen to others and their problems without being involved directly. Juniors can directly approach you and ask questions, right?
Yeah.
So when you are being observed in an open space, you have a problem. I often had this situation in open spaces and startups where I would see somebody deal with a complicated problem on a whiteboard, and I would just go join them. It's like, hey guys, do you need help? It's like, yeah, Dennis, we're solving this. What do you think? Or you might even come to me and say, Dennis, do you have 5 minutes? It's like, yeah, sure. What's going on? Or I might say, hey, give me 20 minutes. I'm working on something important. I need I need to get this out of my head. And then I go join them, and then we do the information radiation thing. Um, the biggest dysfunction that I see organization wide is this idea that the product is divorced from engineering and it has to be that way. There is no solution to this. Like, you need to be able to say, who owns the product? Does engineering own the product, or does product own the product? Because if product owns the product, what they need to absorb engineering skill rapidly, extremely quickly, as fast as possible. If they don't want to own the product, then engineers need to absorb product skill rapidly, immediately, as fast as possible. But not everything in the business, just that they're working on, which means that it'll create a situation of this team or these individuals are very experienced on this part of the product, and it might not stay that way forever. But right now, they are the experts on this product. We have a team. We have a team by virtue of saying we have established a more permanent team. Maybe it's platform engineering, maybe it's a more dedicated team to a very specific subdomain that will always be around, or that will be around for years, not months. And they have core domain knowledge about this area, and whoever touches something goes and collaborates with them. Whoever
But I
touches something in their domain goes and collaborates with them. And that is very healthy. But I'm talking about product understanding, engineering understanding, sysops understanding, business understanding, and also understanding the value stream for the clients.
yes, but let's when you say this is totally right. We were talking about that quite often. But when we are, let's say, very honest now, then
Mm-hmm.
it's not really reflects, or it doesn't really reflect what's out there. So maybe it's interesting to talk about that, how to get to this type of
Yes.
culture you just described. So first of
Yes.
all, the company is the team. It's not the engineers, it's not the ops, it's
That's a
not
good.
product,
A
it's
company
not the
is
sales.
a team of
Right.
teams that have different forms of dysfunctions. There will always be some dysfunction. The important part is choosing what trade-offs do you want to do. What are the opposing forces where you are making trade-offs? There's also if I describe the Spotify model, in a way that's also described in the book Accelerate. There are also downsides to this model. Downsides to this model being that you constantly require people who are staff level who coordinate cross-team concerns. That's a problem. That's a side effect of such a culture. Now, how to get there? The important part is understanding what business incentives does it enable, and what other business incentives does it close? Like, what doors does it close?
Yeah,
Because
but let's get into a real scenario now. So we have a team which is used to work the very traditional way. So the anti-pattern of what we just described.
Mhm.
And then we have the management who's
Actually,
aware of
hold
that.
that thought. Can I jump out for 2 minutes? Can you be alone on stream for 2 minutes? I need to jump
I'm
to the
afraid to be alone, man. Okay.
bathroom.
So whatever you do it quickly. No, just one. So I hope I can remember my thought. But what I maybe can give meanwhile is um, when we think about the idea what's going on outside there in our business, in our businesses, we often see that we have these ideas of how things should be, especially when you read things on LinkedIn, for example. There are those daily posts everywhere. People posting about specific things you should practice, nice ideas and all this kind of stuff. And oftentimes people read this and say, oh, it would be great if it would be like that in my company, in my team, with my colleagues or with my employees, no matter in which content you are, context you are right now. And the problem with that is that LinkedIn is a representation of how it's not actually, how it's not being in out there at the moment. It's a representation of how it should be. It's the desired state. And in my opinion, we should all work on that this desired state can become reality. And this is what we're going to talk next. But it's especially important for everyone who's reading those posts every day, that you should not be like it should not pull you down, especially not your mind, your happiness factor or something like that, because it's not really a reality. So most of the companies out there does have or will or have problems, a lot of problems. There are teams, you don't see them, you just see their website, their nice videos, and in reality they struggle. They all work in over hours. They work on weekends. They blame each other. They have toxic environments and they still can't do something. So most of us have those problems. So let's be very honest about that. Even the content I'm talking about, my videos, are representations of my learnings how it should be, because I know it's best, but still extremely hard and challenging to implement this. And this is the reason why you need to become a continuous learner, to do that over and over and over again, to become better every day, to learn about those things. It's an ongoing process for everyone. Even if people posting every day about how it should be, it doesn't mean that this person is actually capable of executing that in real life with a real team, with real people, with real problems, personal problems. People have personal problems. You can't motivate them to be a part of the team. Then you come to the point where you need to decide, for example, as an employer, I'm an employer, do you lay off this person or not? Is this person coachable or not? This is a hard fact decision. So it's not only about, hey, you do a little bit of kumbaya and tell everyone, hey, it's a great culture. Let's do this by culture and everyone will be happy and productive and we will have supportive culture. No, it's not like that. It's hard to get that, even if one person in a 5-person team is working against you, you already have a bad culture. Even if you have 4 people doing well. And this is something we all need to be aware of, that sometimes we need to make hard decisions. And it's a lot about, doing that relentlessly. You need to have a long breath to do those things. It's nothing just, even if a mentor or a coach is coming, suddenly everything is great. No, it's not like this. It's a long thing. So they hear this guy is back again, refreshed, I think. And
Yes.
he's coaching teams as well for a long period of time. And this is the same what I do. So every decision I make with other teams is long term. So we make a decision in January and we take a look in May what happened about this. This is nothing over time. So when you see there's a complicated person in your team, it is a matter of weeks or months to mitigate this, or get this person out of the team and substitute it. If it's the better way, you need to decide those things.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the better, sometimes it's mitigatable. So this is the reason why cultures are bottom up and top down. Culture is not about the leader, it's not about the junior developer, the senior developer. Culture is about everyone in the team, every single person. If you have 10 persons in a team and one is a bad person, you have a bad culture. You cannot say, oh, it's a good culture except this guy. It's not about that. So as long as you have this problem, you will always have this bad guy on the mind of the culture. So I just wanted to point out that if we want to be in a good environment, we need to, every one of us, every of those 10 people need to work on the culture to get this one guy, this one person to become a good person as well, to affirm that person, to motivate. This is this group behavior we have in ourselves, in our DNA, to pull people with us. This is the reason why we often say, you as a person can be a leader without having a title, a role, or something which gives you this force, this power. You can't do that just by being a role model, an example by yourself. You can't do that as a junior developer. So,
The, but the
monologue
point is
ended.
that everybody is capable of self-management. Everybody is capable of being a leader. Everybody is capable of being a manager. Like it's not about a title where it has to be a, people think that management is the zero-sum game, that it has to be dysfunctional like it was on Twitter, where you had, for every engineer you had 7 levels of management. You know, this is from the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, what's the movie called? It escapes me. Um, Office Space. I think it's Office Space, right? Where with the TPS reports, yeah, Office Space. Um, right. So the idea regarding anyway, I'm waffling, but you had a question. You had a very good question.
I
How to get
forgot.
there?
I forgot the question. I
Yes,
knew I
you
forgot
said
it,
how
but
to get to it. It's a very ideal. It's a very idealized way of working, and you asked me, how to get there.
ah, yeah, okay, yeah, yeah.
The
So,
question, the point isn't so much how to get there because I told you so. Because my experience, every team needs to figure out how they work best. The problem is when somebody in your organization is attached to the current way of working. If you're a CEO, if you're CTO, that is the first thing you should work on. Get rid of attachment to process. Your process needs to change because you know there is no improving process per se. Either your process works or you need to change it. If your process doesn't work optimally in all situations all the time, then you need to change it. And guess what? There isn't such a process that works well all the time. There is no general purpose framework for running a
yeah.
company. You need to constantly be changing it. So if you're run into a situation of, oh, like what we did last year, I suddenly it's December and something doesn't work well anymore. Like we're late on projects, business has lost confidence in our ability to deliver. Like we had to postpone a few product deliveries. We had to say no to a few like high caliber clients. What's going on? Is our process still working? What do we need to change? That is what I would encourage you to start. Now, if you're a junior engineer in such an environment, I would encourage you to be more introspective. What can you do to follow your work to the customer? That is number one. Because inevitably you will stumble. It is very likely that you work in a siloed company. Very likely. That means that silos usually come with psychologically, emotionally attached boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
which means that at some point you will do something where somebody will tell you, hey, why are you doing that? That's my job. That's how the silos happen. Because there are people, there are groups, there are teams which find comfort in, oh, we're the accountable people here. It has to be done our way. So I will be responsible for this silo. The problem is when, and this usually happens at the silos of competency. Oh, we have regulators. Okay, we will absorb regulatory knowledge into one team, and then every team has to go through us. That is the worst dysfunction. That is by far the worst dysfunction. And it can happen with product as well. We're the product team. All product engineering delivery has to go through us. We're the QA team. All quality has to go through us.
Yeah.
We're the engineering team. All technology has to go through us. That is a dysfunction. Now, this means that if you get a problem assigned to you, like you own this challenge, you own this issue, improve on this, please. And if you follow it from customer to customer, that's what a value stream is. Market demand meets opportunity. You act on opportunity. You follow whatever you deliver
Mm-hmm.
out to production and talk to the customer again. So you close the loop. It'll be inevitable that you will step on somebody's toes and they will say, hey, why are you doing this? This is my job. And your
Yeah.
job is to stop at that point and now figure out, okay, how do I, next time I do this, how do I not trigger this person? How do I make it appropriate? Obviously, this was inappropriate. The silos are in place, there's rules, and me doing this with benevolent intentions was, by virtue of the old way of how the company does things, inappropriate. How do we make this appropriate? How do we prevent this from being a problem next time?
Well,
Because
let's go into answering those questions because you go for a lot of questions now.
mhm,
But let's take a role. So, for example, the CTO role. It's a
yep,
very common role in between. So this is the most common role when it comes to changing the culture, the idea. So the
yes,
overall, let's say, mindset of the company.
the
And
identity, let's say,
so
the identity
and
of
you don't have infinity attempts to do that. This is just something I give you
yep,
now, practical advice from
yep,
my experience. So you are on the one side as a CTO or CIO sometimes. You are on the business side and you are on the development side as well, which is
mhm,
why you said it right. You should disconnect yourself from the process of business and process of technology. And this is something your people should do that, but you need to connect that. And the problem is when you say, "Oh, I have a great vision," we
mhm,
should do it like our ideals today. So we have all those questions, we need to find answers, and then you
yep,
say boldly, "Oh, we need to have autonomous DevOps teams now who
ooh,
doing that, and we pull product management, into that team as well. We do that, and then you really need to make sure beforehand and basically all the time you need to make sure and improve on that this can actually work,
yes,
because when after half an hour, half a year, or a year, for example, business, so the actual owners of the company, so the real business person, the CEO, for example, or the
the people
the
who
board
took on risk
member.
on establishing the venture.
Yeah, exactly. Those are stakeholders, the board members, all this kind of stuff. They see, oh, it actually wasn't that great, or it even got worse. Then you have a problem, which is
Yes,
that you, as the CTO or a similar person in the company, you take the risk to say boldly, I can do, or we can do that. We can establish that, and your only main goal should be to do that then. And this
yes,
is your actually the this is the reason why I talk so much about cultural change, because this is my main topic. I need to do that all day long. I need to convince people. I need to motivate. I need to empower people. I need to
yeah.
translate, because this is not always going well. This is what I said
It,
when you went there. In reality, you have a lot of challenges there in your company, a
I
lot of
coach
deadlines. You know.
I coach a lot of leaders who are just stuck on this train of they have a choice. Do I focus on culture or the next project? And they focus on the project instead.
This is
And
what I
that's
mean. So you have
and that's
those
the
constraints, and
yeah,
this is hard, because in that moment, when once you have made this bold claim that you can do that, you can't just focus on the next project, because you have already failed then to implement
exactly.
this.
Exactly.
And
You've
this
shown
is
evidence
yeah.
that you're not reliable, your capacity planning is off, your product estimates are off, your understanding of the market is off, your understanding of your engineering capability is off, and your understanding of the business niche and the unique business proposition is off.
Mhm.
So stop doing any further decisions based on all of these things being wrong without at least making some effort to improve some level of understanding.
Mhm.
Your job as a CTO, if we now focus on the managers and plus, your job as a CTO is not to build a product.
No, it's to translate
Your
between every stakeholder.
exactly your job is to figure out what the business needs and what kind of process, what kind of pipeline, what kind of team you need to build so that it can produce that product. But your job directly is not product engineering. A CTO is not a product engineer. A CTO creates a technology culture.
Mhm.
They create the team that is capable of handling one product, two products, five products, 10 products, depending on what they are, depending on how correlated they are. That is what you need to nurture.
Yeah.
And you need to ask yourself this question of if the last project didn't go according to plan, our culture currently, our process is optimized to delivering that way. And you need to ask yourself, why is our process set up like that? Why is it like what is the consequence of not changing this process? Well, we will repeat the same mistakes. But usually what leaders do, CTOs especially, they're burnt out, they don't have enough incentives to change anything. They will just repeat the same process, hoping that the people executing have learned something from their mistakes and that now, okay, yeah, but that was the first time, second time will be better. No, that is an endless trap. That is an endless rabbit hole of mediocre, of poor product engineering. You only have one chance. You try it once, doesn't work, change it immediately, not after the project.
What often people forget, and this is important for juniors as well as for seniors to understand because this was the topic of today, a company can get to an end. It's not like
Yes.
an infinite, so you don't have 1,000 tries to do things and you can't postpone everything to next year. You need to solve your problems as early as possible in order to have a future. So you can
Yeah.
say, oh, then I just leave the company, but that's not, it's not a great mindset because
Mm-hmm.
you will have that mindset on the next company as well. So you are
Yeah.
not a problem
It just
solver
follows you around.
and
Yeah.
you are not really a software developer then. Let's be honest. Your software developer is a problem
Mm-hmm.
solver within a team. And in order to do that, you need to solve the problems of your company right now.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you won't be able to do that in your next company because it's not always
To
a
be
bright day game, you know?
to be
Just
practical, to finish up on this thought, because we have 5 7 more minutes to finish up on this thought of how to nurture such an environment, and let's focus on the managers and the juniors.
mm-hmm.
You wanna ask yourself a question and be very honest about it. Ask yourself the question: is there anything in our process that I'm not allowed to change? Be very earnest with yourself. Ask yourself: is there anything I am not allowed to change about the process? And then follow that to the root cause. Why is that?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I not allowed to change it? Because inevitably you have to ask the question: are some of our problems that we are facing related to the processes that I think I'm not allowed to change? That's where these traps happen. And because in a
They happen
mature,
often.
agile culture, everything is up for grabs. Everything can change. Elon Musk talks about this a lot, and you can hate him, you can love him, like it doesn't matter. The point is he's very productive. He's very he gets things done, and he
Mm-hmm.
gets things done by virtue of questioning everything. Does this process need to be here? Does this meeting need to be here?
Mm-hmm.
Does this order of things need to be like this? Can we do it the other way around? It doesn't make sense. I see this a lot with testing. People tell me, oh, we design something and maybe engineers don't really understand it, and it takes up until the testing phase to really realize that we made a mistake. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, but why is it that way? Change it. And they say, oh, we can't change it. Okay, why are you not allowed to change it? And they will say, oh, Dennis, don't be silly. We can't just reorganize our company. And I say, no. Like, I'm not saying we will reorganize the company in one meeting. But what you're telling me is that you're not even allowed to think about it.
Exactly.
Let's think about
You
it.
don't even start to become better.
Exactly. You're not even considering it. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
there's this physical of I'm not allowed to physically change it. Okay, but at least think about it. Just do a thought experiment with me. Oh no, it's silly because I'm not allowed to change it. Okay, why is that? Somebody at some point has established that rule, and maybe they're no longer with the company.
Now,
Why
when you
is this
say that,
decision in
I
place?
haven't said too much, thought too much about that. But in most CTO fellowship programs I was part of, in the first sessions, it was all about this topic. It
Yes.
was all about overcoming the hurdle and blockades you already have in place to get
Yeah.
the people even to the idea of starting our tech
Mhm.
journey, as
Exactly.
the name suggests.
Today,
It's all
today I
about
had
that.
a conversation with a client, and without going into too much detail, we touched on this point. They said, I know that there are things in our culture that are old-fashioned that might not be serving us anymore. I see that in the market that there's something not serving us anymore. And I asked them, and they knew that there's something to be changed there, but it's a bigger problem. And I said, well, it seems you already know that has to be addressed. And they immediately identified it. Yeah, but it's stepping on some toes because our company is siloed in a certain way. And they were prepared to accept that and move on. And I stopped there and I said, who would we need buy-in from to make changes to that? and they stopped and they paused
Mm-hmm.
and they were silent for 2 minutes. Because I think it was the first time that they really gave that question a thought. It's like, who do we need buy-in from? Because usually it's stepping on toes. It's like,
Yep.
if I change this, that person will be angry. If I change this, I trigger all this like security processes. If I change this, everybody will sort of be riding my back because I'm intruding on their area of expertise. But I framed the question differently. I asked them, who would we need buy-in from to make changes to this, to make improvements to this? And that's where it starts, right? And that is the most powerful question that I can give you if you're CTO, manager, or junior. If somebody in your company tells you, you are not allowed to touch this, the most powerful question you can ask is, who would I need buy-in from to touch this? Who would I need permission from? What would need to change for me to do this alone?
Mm-hmm.
And asking that question. That's the path to growth. Like, what would need to change for me? No, that's not possible. What would need to change for this to be possible? Not.
Sounds like great ending words, right?
It
Of
is.
course, I need to stop you now before you run against this wall of
Thank you.
ours. Okay, so we have talked a lot about topics today, a lot about
Hmm.
different topics, so several topics around
Yeah.
the actual agenda, but it's okay to do that. We
Yeah.
have several engagements today. It was great, and I think we learned a lot. So when we go through the creation of clips, I will listen to something again because it's always good to have that on mind. Maybe
Hmm.
I can give that as my point of view. There are so many things you need to keep in mind in order to change your own perception, the perception of your team, the culture, the aspects. So we drifted a little bit into culture, but the stages from junior to self-managed is actually all about learning and culture. So
Yeah.
when there's a bad culture, you have problems to learn. You need to
Hmm.
learn and affirmative yourself, have intrinsic motivation to get to a point. You need to
Hmm.
understand what is the senior, what is the role model, what is my actually goal. So we covered
Hmm.
a lot of those topics. And what I know for myself is I still continuously learn and digest other opinions in order to get better. I
Yeah.
learned for myself that learning is not something you do in the first years and then you slow down. It's vice versa. I've learned a lot less in my first years than I do now.
Same.
And I'm basically a constant learner now. it is sometimes I'm a little bit afraid of myself. So I have those earphones here. So those are my Samsung earphones. I have them. I there was basically not an hour in the last year where those weren't in my proximity. I have them always plugged in, always
Hmm.
some form of audiobook, podcast, discussion
Hmm.
running. Those I always learn, I always read, I always write, and maybe it's a little bit too much, but there's always something to learn. So just for
Yeah.
you to give you an idea of what's as a junior developer, as a role model, for example, what is that in the future? What you want to get there? So what is your real goal? There is no end goal. There is just a goal to become better every day. So to break it down like that, and the more you learn, you're more you're capable to learn more. So it's basically like that, and it is important to surround yourself with great people who challenge you.
Hmm.
This is what Dennis said. Um, get people around you where you can learn from or learn by working with
Hmm.
them. For example, this kind of mentorship thing. You always should have this in mind. And as a junior as well, of course, you have a lot of people you can learn things from. But on some point, you need to start to know, and this is we've talked about this. On which point is the time when you become a mentoring person? And this is the point where you are not a junior anymore. Even if
Hmm.
you may stuck in a pay grade of a junior, you are not in the common sense, you are not a junior anymore.
Yeah.
And this is maybe an interesting point to end today. I
It
hope.
is.
Good.
Okay.
We have overtime.
It's all right. I don't have a book club meeting today, so
No? Okay.
I'm relaxed. No, we're taking a
Okay.
pause in December. Social one in next week. So next week is going to be we're rebranding. We're experimenting with the change of the brand. So you can see in my screen the new logo is down here now. Our tech journey is going to be the common brand that sort of captures our streams with Adrian. Um, Wednesdays will continue to be more leadership focused. Thursdays will continue to be more sort of craftsmanship focused. Today was a little bit of an exception because it touches on both domains. We are setting up a conversation for next week. We may have a guest that will talk to us about leadership. If not, we will take over and do it alone like we did yesterday. And on Thursday, we have a guest for test-driven development. I made a survey some while ago about the correlation of test-driven development and psychological safety. We will go over that, the sort of the influence of TDD on high-performing teams and whether it's necessary or not, or is it a mandatory skill? Is it just some weird fashion thing, or we will be discussing those aspects of it, also from like a leadership and managerial perspective, not so much from writing code. And yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you all for being with us. I can tell from the analytics, from live analytics, that people actually joined in and they sort of went in and out, and we actually got more people on the show today towards the end, which is an interesting change to the cadence. Um, yeah, thank you so
And
much.
and and there's another idea I want to quickly talk about is we thought about the idea of getting people temporarily on the show. Um, so maybe if some of you are interested in have decent microphones and stuff like this.
Yeah, if
Uh,
you have done like a LinkedIn audio event where you just came on stage to ask a question, we would like to experiment with that format, but still keep video streaming.
yeah,
We're still figuring out the what the cadence there is. I think the easiest way would be for you to join StreamYard and with your camera on or off as you wish, and to then ask a question to us or to ask a guest a question. To sort of up the ante a
mhm.
little bit and sort of become a bit more closer to the stage. So if you're interested in that, please let us know. It's definitely gonna happen. But with your help, it's gonna be much better than what we will come up with
Yep.
or
So
from the get go.
since we don't pull up a person, it's more like you need to push yourself up, but
Yeah,
we will
yeah,
motivate you to do that. So let us know
yeah.
in LinkedIn communication. Good, good. Then maybe we should close now.
Yep.
Yes, and yeah, thank you everyone. Thank you for joining today and listening to us. Thank you for the feedback. We will write about this as usual. And yes, thank you very much, and see you next time, next Wednesday.
See you next time. Ciao.
Bye bye.